Welcome to the Landmark Theatres Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with writer Amy Jo Albany and actor Flea from the film Lowdown, moderated by Landmark Theatres Dan Gorski, recorded at the Landmark West LA. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story with us. I mean, this is an amazing story. It seems like, in a way, that it would be a really difficult process to start, like to decide you're going to write a memoir about this. Is that just something you had to do? At what point in your life did you decide, I need to start, getting this down into the memoir?
I think just it happened when it seemed like probably felt like I was in a safe enough place in my life, and I had sort of moved past a lot of, maybe more just sadness that I had from my childhood. And I mean, I had my own kids, and I just thought wanted to tell this story. And also a lot of it to bring my dad's music, that was so underappreciated, really, along with a lot of guys he played with, just to bring that story to the forefront and, have people listen to his music. So,
at what point did it start becoming a topic that this would be a movie? Like, did somebody approach you about this?
Yeah, yeah, I had a book signing at Book Soup. My first book signing, the book just came out, and so Albert Berger from Bonafide came, and I thought someone put him up to it. It was a joke, He said, "Well, I think this movie, this book should be a movie," and so he optioned it, and 10 years. It took 10 years, so wow. And 16 drafts, and it was a lot of finally happened. So.
Well, great job. I mean, the detail in this movie, the small details, it really felt like we were there with you, and I feel like none of that texture would have been there without you, sort of delving deep into yourself. So thank you for telling that story. We really appreciate it.
That's very nice.
Flea, if you could talk a little bit about getting involved in this project and playing a musician. You're a musician, so but this is a little bit different. How did you get involved in this movie?
Well, Amy sent me a script, right? It was your idea, right?
It was my idea. Someone sent it to you.
Yeah. I just received a script in the mail, and I read it, and I was blown away by the content of it, really, and just the parallel of it to my own childhood, because I grew up right down the street from there, and I also had a jazz musician parent who was a drug addict at the same time in the same town. And I just, I was astonished by it. I couldn't believe it. I remember just like shaking and having goosebumps and stuff. And I went and met with Amy and Jeff, and they were really kind and invited me to be a part of it, and I just play a small part of it, but I'm really grateful and honored to be a part of it. It means a lot to me. And just to shed some light on the jazz musicians of that time, because, very much like Amy, my dad, it was actually my stepdad, but he was the one that was around the most, was a jazz musician, and I grew up admiring this music that is really kind of for me, the benchmark of what American culture is capable of, and the great gift that America gave the world. So to shed some light on the guys from that period of time who, when they grew up loving the jazz greats, the bebop greats, Charlie Parker, Monk, Dizzy, all those guys, Fats Navarro, and for them to have dedicated their lives to this incredible craft. And then, come the 70s, nobody really cared about what they had to offer, and they just couldn't catch a break or a gig or anything. And so just in any way to shed some light on those guys that I grew up loving and admiring and who I looked up to when I was a kid means a lot to me. Yeah.
Did you, well, first of all, talk a little bit about what it was like on set. Did you guys get time to rehearse? Kind of what was that process like? Were you on set as well to kind of offer your input?
I was hanging around.
Yeah. Did they go to you a lot to get kind of like your take on the scene or like to get into the...
No. It depends. Some people did, I think. Like Glenn was really into, like, wanting to know everything about my grandma and, what did she do and what did she think about that. I mean, all the different actors have a different process, and so yeah. I mean, I hope I was useful in some way. I don't know.
What was it like watching Elle Fanning? I mean, she did an amazing job, by the way, playing this part. But is that what it felt like? Did she bring something different to the part, or were you kind of like you were there in the moment again?
No, the thing about watching that is always with each process, I feel like we all start with memory. We have our memories, and then when I wrote the book, that process was very personal, because in my mind, of course, I'm seeing the real people and fully reliving the real situations, and then you write a screenplay and it steps away from another step away from reality, and then the film is yet another layer. It's like another. So I didn't really. She did a beautiful job. I think I was a little bit maybe not so sweet as she was. I don't know. I mean, it was tough. Like, you had to be a little bit tough in Hollywood then. I mean, you couldn't be. I don't know. But she was fantastic, and she gave a light to the whole story that was just beautiful. I mean, like her spirit was really just sweet and lovely.
Since you grew up in that, did you have a chance to play with some of those musicians as you were growing up? I mean, was that kind of how you launched your?
Well, I was a kid growing up around those guys, and I just admired them very much. And as a child, my goal in life was to be a jazz trumpet player when I grew up. That's all I wanted to be. And come high school, I met some friends who played rock music, and I started playing bass, and one thing led to another, and it became my career. But it's always in me, and I love jazz so much. It's the music that I listen to more than any other music, and it's the thing that gives me hope for that human beings can actually be nice people, And to answer your question from before, I being on the set and doing it, it was, I don't act very much, a little bit here and there, but for me, this, it meant so much to do this, and it meant so much, and in one way it was great because I really, worked on getting it together to do it, and, to play a character that's, pretty pathetic in this film in a lot of ways. I had really had to tap into a part of myself, but I was getting to work with actors who are really great actors, like Elle and John and Glenn, and they were so kind to me and generous and helpful with me and tolerant, yeah.
We see a lot of stories where musicians are kind of like weighed down by this addiction to drugs, and we know that it's very common in the industry, no matter what type of music you play. What's your take on it? What do you think? Do you think it's more something about getting your head into music, or is it more about the lifestyle where you're kind of trying to numb yourself?
I think that, honestly, I don't think that musicians are more likely to be drug addicts and plumbers or garbage men or lawyers. I don't think that drug addiction has any prejudices at all, and it's pretty equal all across the cultural board all over the world. But in particular, I guess these jazz guys, at that time, a lot of them grew up, they loved Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was a godlike figure, and truly, one of the great geniuses that the world has ever come up with. So, and he was a heroin addict. So I think for a lot of guys, they admired him so much, and that drug was in the culture at that time that they fell into that, had that problem. But I just think it's the human condition in general. I don't attribute it to music.
The general idea, though, is talking about the emotion of the character, and kind of, did you draw from your experience as a childhood, or did you kind of have to remove yourself from that?
I definitely did not want to remove myself. I wanted to go as deep into it as I could, and I loved the jazz musicians that I grew up, that were in and out of my house all the time, like jamming in my living room. When I was a kid, they touched me deeply, and like I said, it was, for me, when I would come home from school or get up or whatever, and those guys had been like up all night, and they were like, playing jazz in my living room. It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life, and I couldn't imagine that such beauty could exist, and it meant so much to me. So the fact that they could just pick up these instruments and start making that sound, So I love that so much. So, and that's such a natural thing for me that I just wanted to go as deep into that love as possible. In terms of, being a heroin addict, and that was a stretch for me as an actor, someone's phone. That was definitely a stretch for me as an actor because I'm like, brown rice and tofu and, alkaline water, and running. Like I'm a kind of a, I don't live that kind of, it's been a long, long time since I've been a drug user, so, but I do know what it's like. I did do a lot of drugs when I was young. But I like I said, it meant a lot to me, and I really, I've done little acting parts here and there, and usually I've never been able to, like when I play music, I try to get myself into an ecstatic trance where I just like totally let go of everything and let this thing flow through me. That's a magic thing. And I'd never really been able to do that as an actor, but I felt like in this movie, I kind of learned how to do that and how to really let go and just feel the love, and even if it meant feeling a lot of pain. And that was great. That was a good feeling.
All right. Yes, you can.
I have a question about your mom. Beyond the film, after, what happens? If that's not too intrusive, is there still a relationship?
Well, I saw her a couple times. She was up in San Francisco, living up in the Tenderloin. And, but, sadly, it was pretty much what was depicted. She was a drunk, and I don't mean that in like a, like I said, you mean it in a negative way. But we never really were able to have a relationship. I would go up there and try to catch her early enough before she could make it to the bar around the corner, and you sort of have a fighting chance at conversation. But no, it was, it was very sad because she was quite an amazing person, but just suffering, So. No, she died the same year as my dad, oddly, like within 6 months, and they hadn't seen each other for years, so it was sort of, they both, she's not here anymore. Uh-huh.
So it's a question about the experience of music and kind of like where you guys see music going in the future, inspiring new music and new musicians.
I just hope that people, can sit by themselves in a room and play music and listen to music and turn off their phones and stuff. Music is, for me, it's the highest voice that there is, and way, much more than what words could ever express. So I just hope that people can remain curious and, fuck the man,
One of the other things that struck me from the movie was how music was so present in their daily lives, like live music in their house. And I think that is something that seems to be missing these days, or at least it's not as common. I'm wondering, do you have a chance to kind of bring that into your house with your kids? Are you bringing in music more? Or are they just naturally kind of, attracted to music?
Well, I hope some of both, but yeah, absolutely. The whole thing from when they were in the womb, just always playing music, and putting them to sleep with music and waking them up with music, and just, music. My husband and I, we have like thousands of records, and there's, all kinds of music. We love all music, and so I think it has, they have that love, and it's so great. I think it's one of the most important things that you can give your kids or your friends or anyone.
Yeah. Okay, so from a fifth grade perspective, is wondering, trumpet or bass? Do you have a preference?
I really love them both. They're both, really different instruments. But I think if you have something inside you, and a feeling, and it just feels good when you play it, that you just engage that beautiful feeling and play. Because, when I was your age, I think I started playing trumpet in 7th grade. And I just loved it. I was in love with my trumpet. I would just put it on my bed. I remember and stand there and look at it, and just it seemed so great, like an amazing magical thing, you know. And I like them both kind of the same. I haven't had time to play trumpet a lot lately because I'm so busy, you know, with my professional life as a bass player. But whenever I get into a groove and I play it a lot, and as you know, you really have to practice trumpet a lot to keep your sound together. I get such a deep, happy feeling from it, you know. And it's also because with the bass, oftentimes you need electricity and an amp and all this stuff. And a trumpet, you can just pick it up and blow it, and that's so cool that you're playing it. Have fun.
First influential album for each of you. Yes.
I mean, there's a few for me. When I was a kid, I really loved a trumpet player named Clifford Brown, and I would put on those records, and it just felt so joyful to me, you know, like I think in a lot of ways I might have been kind of a melancholy kid, and I felt such a feeling of joy from it, and I grew up, you know, being really loving, and something else happened was I grew up loving this jazz music that was so sophisticated and difficult to play and incredible. And then when I got to be like in my late teens, I discovered punk rock. And there was a record by a band called The Germs. They made this record called GI, and I used to listen to that over and over and over in the headphones in my apartment. And it was the first time that I ever had like a big awakening that music, it wasn't so much what a great musician you were in terms of your technical and, you know, your sophistication as a musician, but the emotional content of it and the motivation to play it. And I don't even know what their motivation was. I didn't know them, but I know that it awakened something in me that I wasn't awake before, and that was a really profound experience. So those two records are really big for me, you know. And Hendrix, you know, of course, that kind of crossed both of those worlds for me, you know.
Boy, it's so much different music around. We had a lot of 78s, which was incredible, just the whole experience of playing them. And they were so heavy. I had this really strong smell, you know, and there was all of this just tactile and everything that went with it. But we had like a Potato Head Blues. We had a bunch of Louis Armstrong 78s, and those just, I loved that music. It just made me so happy. And the soundtrack, when I got the soundtrack from Clockwork Orange, I just listened to that over and over and over and over. And God, all kinds of, I mean, it sounds kind of, but my dad's, the album that he did, the first one, with Warren Marsh, I love that album from 57, I think, right? And I still think it really doesn't, I can't think of any album that sounds like that. It's really unique, and it was done in the living room, you know, of the sound guy, and but it's just probably reminded me of how when I was a kid, and all these musicians would come over and play, and it was so incredible to hear it live. Like, you know, I think I was just gonna levitate sometimes, you know, and that album, the sound of it, the engineering of it, or the lack of engineering, reminds me of that time so much, and that you felt that you were in a privileged, you know, you were in an atmosphere rarefied of hearing these guys.
Yeah, talk a little bit about your life with, you know, your relationship with your father after the end of the film. Oh, and
Cole joined the Navy, and I don't know what happened to him. I didn't hear from him. Let's see. Well, I was 24. You know, it was another 10 years, I guess, before my father died, and he had gone back. He was living in New York, and you know, I would try to get out there and visit him, but it was a strained relationship. I mean, you know, the relationship with a junkie is especially someone who can sort of emotionally shanghai you because you love them. You know, they're your father, whatever the relationship is. He, you know, you get a lot of 2 a.m. calls and just asking you for money, and it was hard, you know. It was a hard relationship. There were some good times. I mean, it wasn't, but towards the end, I'd say, like the last few years, yeah, it was very sad, you know. Yeah, I don't know how else to say that.
Was there like a story that you remember from your childhood that was kind of a fun story that maybe you couldn't get into the film, but you at one point you thought about putting in the film? Was there anything that you had to cut out?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were talking about this, and I mean, even the book, I don't know if anyone's read, but the book, you know, I think there was a lot of joy and a lot of fun, and I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have traded that life, even with the lows, for anything, because it was spontaneous and it was passionate, you know, the people, and Hollywood was a blast, and there were some things that didn't make the cut, unfortunately, but that's showbiz, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so talk a little bit about working with the director on set and kind of giving him your story and working with others on that.
Yeah, I was on set every day because we filmed it in Hollywood, so and I didn't have any work, so they told me to show up, so I showed up, and it was sure it's hard, you know. I mean, it's so strange. I feel like the journey when you write, it's like a lone journey, you know, and you go down a road and you make your own decisions about it and whatever path you're going to take, and then you go down the road with a film, and you have all these other people with you, you know, collaborating, and it's difficult. Like I'm kind of a lone person anyway, so it was tricky. We differed about things, like we would argue about things, to be honest, you know, but I mean, ultimately it's the director, and I think it was like Ernest Hemingway or something that, I mean, not I'm making comparisons, but they did a movie of The Sun Also Rises, and it was not a good movie, you know, it was a good book, and I said, what do you think about what they did, you know, with your book? And he said, well, they didn't do it. The book is still there on the shelf, you know, that's my story, and whatever they did is it's its own creation, you know, it definitely is its own animal, and yeah, I thought he was true to his vision of it for sure, and I thought he did a pretty good job, you know. I'm not a director.
Yeah, what did you learn from this process?
I don't know. I mean, I learned that I think I just want to stick to writing books. No, and if anyone wants to make a movie, you know, down the line, that's great. I mean, but it's hard. It's a very difficult process, and it's very, you know, there's just so much. It's not the kind of world that I was a real fish out of water with it. So I guess maybe it was good. Maybe I learned to be a little more resilient and get along with people.
Well, I learned that Amy's my friend. Which was cool.
That was the best thing I learned.
Yeah, and you know, I like I said before, I in terms of acting, I've done it, you know, little bits here and there, but I learned that I could really use it as like I think of music as like a magic wand, you know. It's like you channel this mighty force, and it's like pow, you know. When it's working, it's like you wield this like energy that you're just a vehicle for. And I learned that it's possible to do that as an actor, and I didn't really know that before. And that's cool.
Curious, you guys both had very tumultuous childhoods and seemed like they were similar, but you've both gone on to do incredible creative things for people. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how you overcame those obstacles.
Well, it's a cliche, you know, but I mean, I think there is something to that. It does make you strong in a way that, you know, to come through things like that, and it makes me. I mean, just pretty determined to try to rise above, you know, all of that, like a lot of the sadness and a lot of the. And tell. I always wanted to tell stories, you know, and I don't know if that's it, but I just mostly it's just about really, you know, and also not letting things get you down. Like if you get knocked around by a life like that when you're young, I think it just kind of toughens you up and just makes you try hard harder maybe, you know, and it was just hard work for me and luck, I think, and I don't know what Flea has to say about that.
Okay.
Well, as George Clinton said, if there weren't any humps, there wouldn't be any getting over them. I don't think that it's possible to experience kindness and compassion and strength on a really deep level without suffering on a really deep level, So I think in any walk of life, like as an artist or an athlete or an academic person, that really caring comes from feeling the pain that all human beings feel, to various extents. So, I'm grateful for everything in my life that's been difficult. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for sharing your story. Flea, thank you for coming.